Hey, Giants fans and football fans, welcome to the GiantsGrit, your YouTube channel with views and reviews of the New York football Giants. So, this afternoon, the Giants finally broke a 10-game losing streak. They won 45-33 over the Indianapolis Colts. Some people will say, hey, they blew having the number one overall pick, and there's still two games left. Oh, excuse me, one game left. But you know what? I think it's better for them to win. You never know who's gonna. I mean, especially this year. There's no Andrew Luck, Troy Aikman, John Elway, or even Caleb Williams, top of the draft, number one overall player who also happens to play quarterback. Between Sanders and Cam Ward as the number one picks, I don't think it's so bad having the fourth pick, so I'm not worried about it. Plus, all those other teams can still lose out. So, anyways, they could have as worse as the number 9 pick. But onto the review. Drew Lock. One of the reasons they won is because Drew Lock had the best game of his life. He was 17 of 23 for 309 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 1 rushing touchdown, 0 interceptions. So congratulations, Drew Lock. I picked on you, basically saying you caught the Daniel Jones disease, which you did, but you overcame it this time. So I'm happy for him. So way to go, Drew Lock. He is the main reason they won. Second reason they won, I would say, is great wide receiver play, especially by rookie Malik Nabers. He had 7 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns and looked spectacular doing it. So very much looking like the 6th pick of his draft class, this past draft class. So yeah, quarterback play, great wide receiver play, and very good offensive line protection. So especially with backup players in there and some rotation going around. So let's go unit by unit. Drew Lock, again, played very well. What I think he did different was he didn't drift out of the pocket like he usually does, like Daniel Jones did, like Tommy DeVito did. He stood tall in the pocket, stepped up when he had to, would sidestep, but this time only when necessary. He wouldn't just have a great pocket and then start drifting out of it and run into the pass pressure like he did previous games. So that, I think, was the number one reason. Number 2 was he did get good time, no jailbreaks, and just had excellent pass protection throughout the game. And yeah, and seemed to make the right reads, threw well. I mean, he doesn't throw very well along the sidelines. That would be my only criticism of him this game. But yeah, I mean, let's give credit where the credit's due. Drew Lock had a great game, the best game of his career. Moving on to the running backs. The running game didn't work well. Tyrone Tracy had 59 yards on 20 carries. That includes a 40-yard run. So basically he had 19 carries for 19 yards other than the 40-yard run. However, that's why I like that he got 20 carries. That's why you feed a guy a good running back carries. Because what happens? He could be getting 1 yard a carry, less than that, and then boom, he breaks off a 40-yard run. So that's why I'm glad they stuck with it. 20 carries, 59 yards. Devin Singletary had 5 carries for 21 yards, so he averaged over 4 yards a carry. So running game didn't look good, however, but I like that they stuck with it. It complemented the passing game, and of course 309 yards on only 17 completions. Shows that the passing game did very well. Moving on to the wide receivers. Again, great game by the wide receivers. Not just Malik Nabers. Rookie Malik Nabers, 7 catches, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns, and again, looked spectacular doing it. Caught passes short, medium, and what's impressive is both his touchdowns were short passes. He basically took a pass that was like on the line of scrimmage or maybe a yard or 2 off of it and took it for 31 yards, his first touchdown. And then the last touchdown that he took for 59 yards, that didn't travel very far in the air either. So, I mean, he was probably 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, if that, and, took it the other 40-something yards. So, again, Malik Nabers. Not to mention, That one that right before the Giants' third touchdown, he had a great catch by around inside the 5 yard line, so that was an excellent catch. He had another comeback catch where he basically Drew Lock kind of threw it up in coverage. Not threw it up, but he was going down the sidelines. He was well covered, but the way he turned back to and reached out for the ball was excellent. So again, an excellent game, a great game by Malik Neighbors. So, and then Wan'Dale Robinson, who caught 5 catches for 71 yards, including a touchdown catch for about 5 yards or so. So yeah, he looked great. He gets open like he usually does, but he usually doesn't get much yards after the catch. But he was able to get separation. He had a 35-yarder where he broke a couple of tackles. It was nice to see him. Yeah, he got it for 35 yards, but he ran about 15 himself. So he caught the ball about 20 yards down the field. So kudos for Drew Lock for hanging tough in the pocket and stepping up in the pocket and finding guys like Wan'Dale Robinson open. Darius Slayton only had one catch for 32 yards, but it was a touchdown. Also in the second quarter, it was a slant pass, about 10, 12 yards past the line of scrimmage. But Slayton, to his credit, broke a tackle. It wasn't a hard tackle for him, but he kept his feet and ran for the rest of the yardage for a touchdown. So it was nice to see him get a touchdown because he's had really quiet games the last few games. So nice to see all 3 starting wide receivers got touchdowns. Great to see. And, again, credit to Drew Lock. And now for tight ends, Daniel Bellinger didn't get any catches this game. Chris Manhertz did have one catch for 12 yards, and it was a nice kind of improv play by Drew Lock again. It was nice to see. So they didn't block very well. They didn't get to seal the edges. So no holes really by the tight ends. But overall, no jailbreaks either. So tight ends, quiet game, but did just well enough. As for the offensive line, excellent pass protection, bad run blocking. There were really no holes other than the 5th run of the game or so by Tyrone Tracy that he busted for 40 yards. Nice play by the right guard, Jeff Kubas, the rookie who got his 2nd straight start in a row, who had an excellent game, by the way. And Evan Neal, he sealed it really nicely. So, and Evan Neal has gotten his share of flack, including from me this year. But that was a nice block. And those two made that 40-yard run possible as they cleared a really nice hole for Tracy to run through for 40 yards. So, Kubas got the start at right guard. As I said, his 2nd straight start. Evan Neal at right tackle. Oh, Greg Van Rooten started at center, and he seems to be a better pass protector than JMS. Not as good in the run blocking as it showed, as you didn't see many holes up the middle. But yeah, definitely better pass protection. So interesting to see what they'll be doing next year. Greg Van Rooten, unfortunately, he's 34 years old, but he played well. So who knows? I think they maybe should re-sign him. And until his game falls off the cliff, you got to stick with him. I would. Left guard, Aaron Stinney got the start. Of course, Jermaine Illuminor played at left tackle. Both played solid, especially in pass protection. Unfortunately, neither got much going in the run game. But a little bit credit to Indianapolis run defense, too, as there were just no holes for Tyrone Tracy or Devin Singletary to run through, except for the aforementioned 40-yard run by Tracy. Singletary also had a 13-yard run in the second half. That was nice, but that was it. Everything else was like 5 yards and under in the running game. Even Drew Lock, who did get a touchdown run of about, I want to say it was 7 or 8 yard touchdown run, that was all him really. So, but moving on to the defense didn't play a good game. Overall, the defensive line, the Indianapolis Colts, they ran for 125 yards. 125 yards by Jonathan Taylor alone. They made some plays. Elijah Chapman had a pretty decent game. Nacho had his best game. I think his best game as a Giant. He had a couple tackles. He had a quarterback hit. He had a sack in the first quarter. So way to go for Nacho. But everybody else pretty much, the only good thing you would say is they stopped the run when they had to in the red zone on third down. So, but again, when another team gets a ton of first downs on you, and not to mention the pass protection was pretty good by the Colts because the Giants got no push and no pass rush pressure from the interior defensive line, which next to quarterback I think is their biggest need. As for the edge rushers, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau had average games for them. Brian Burns had a good game against the run. He had 3 tackles, and he had 3 tackles for loss. He had a quarterback hit. So, okay game, but certainly capable of much better, and I was kind of hoping he would have a better game. Kayvon Thibodeau kind of had the opposite of what I was saying. He's had better games, but didn't look good on the stats. However, this game, he looked good on the stats sheet. He had a couple tackles, quarterback hit, he got a quarterback sack, he got a forced fumble, he got a pass defense. However, other than that, he was relatively invisible for most of the game, but he made his splash plays, so it looks good on his stat sheet. So nobody else really got on. Tamron Fox had another tackle and had some playing time, but for the most part, relatively not much playing time for the other edge players. Boogie Basham, I guess, is kind of, again, plays that hybrid. The Giants did play some 3-man defensive line early, so they were able to stop the Indianapolis Colts, at least before Jonathan Taylor really got revving in the second quarter. But they kind of went away from it. Maybe it's because they had a little bit of a lead. And again, I think the Giants played kind of a hybrid 3-man defensive line, as in, when I say hybrid, I mean 3 defensive tackles, and Boogie Basham is kind of masquerading as a big defensive lineman, even though he's kind of a edge rusher. Anyway, he's mediocre at everything. So, moving on to the off the ball linebackers, Micah McFadden unfortunately missed the game. He's out with a burner. Ty Sumner's subbed for him and had a good game. He had 11 tackles. 11 tackles is pretty impressive. He got beaten coverage, kind of like how everybody did, of course, on short passes. But considering the defensive line didn't play very well, I thought he's a physical player. I wish he was a younger player because he's a pretty good backup to have. So he had a better game than I thought he did. Again, Indianapolis still ran for over 125 yards on us. But again, it's not on Ty Sumner, certainly. And rookie Darius Muasu, he had his 3rd straight starting for Bobby O. He had 8 tackles, no splash plays, got beat a little bit in coverage as well. Nothing spectacular, but held his ground. He makes his fair share of tackles, and I expect him to improve. I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes, how he develops over the next couple of years. So happy to have him. No other inside linebackers, off the ball linebackers really got much playing time. I know Johnson did, but didn't do anything really. I think he had 1 tackle on the stat sheet. That was about it. As for the secondary, they actually played, I'll be specific, let's go with the corners. The corners, which I feel is the strength of this Giant team, I thought they played poorly. Arguably their poorest game of the season. I mean, both Pittman and Alec Pierce had 100-yard receiving games, and Flacco was able to hit a lot of underneath receivers. So, yeah, they play, and that goes on the corners. I feel like they played a lot of zone in this game. But, yeah, unfortunately, you got to give the corners. Deonte Banks had a horrible game. He had 6 tackles. He had 1 pass defense, but the guy just does not look for the ball. And I'm really getting worried. I mean, he had a solid rookie season. I know, he's not a playmaker, if you will. He's never going to get a bunch of interceptions. He'll probably get 2 to 4 a year if you're lucky, but he doesn't look like he looks like he could play 20, 25 straight games and never get another interception. So really disappointed in him. He had 2 pass interference penalties, including 2 long ones. So, yeah, I don't think he could be a number 1 starting corner. Going into the season, I was like, yeah, he's a really good number 2, possibly like a 1B. If he improves, he could be a number 1 corner, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, unfortunately, he makes a number 1 corner a big need. I don't know what they'll do. Maybe they could spend big on free agency as their one marquee free agency signing at corner. Or who knows, depending how the draft plays out, will they draft Travis Hunter, who I don't think is dropping out of the top 3, top 5 at worst. Will Johnson of Michigan, he's a top 5, top 10 pick, maybe if the Giants really drop down there. We'll see. I mean, it looks like that second round pick that the Giants have, assuming it's not traded, that might go to corner or defensive tackle or offensive tackle. That's what I think. But unfortunately, Deonte Banks has had that kind of year. I know I shouldn't base too much of it on one game, but it just doesn't look like, I don't know. I'm not very confident with Deonte Banks. The guy can still play. He's still got talent. Again, but I think he's a number 2 corner in this league. As for Cordell Flott didn't have a good game either in coverage, gave up a lot of passes. They played some zone, but a lot of it he was responsible for. I did say last week I was encouraged by his game against the Falcons in that it didn't look good on the stat sheet, but I'm really pleased that his tackling stepped up. And he did play well, his tackling. So I have more hopes for him than Deonte Banks as far as improving. So he might surpass Deonte Banks as a number 2 corner if we get a number 1 corner in here. So discouraged with Banks, still have hope for Flott as far as improvement. As for rookie Drew Phillips, the nickelback, 6 tackles and his first interception in the league. Very happy with his gameplay. Yeah, sure, he gave up some completions and coverage as well, as to be expected. Isaiah Simmons, he played his hybrid safety / inside linebacker in corner, and he gave up some completions. He did have 3 tackles and a pass defense, but I don't think moving forward, they're going to re-sign him. He's just re-signed for the 1 year, so we'll see. It depends if they get a new defensive coordinator, if they like him or not. But staying on the last corner who played was Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson didn't have a good game. Again, they played a lot of zone, but these guys got beat. And Adoree Jackson also gave up a lot of completions. So he had just a couple of tackles and a pass defense. So not discouraged with Adoree Jackson. I still think he's a more than serviceable player, but not his best game. As for the safeties, now there was a lot of zone play. And Jason Pinnock specifically looked like he got late, especially on a couple of touchdown passes. It looked like his responsibility. However, it still looked like the corners came over late, and he was just trying to cover up, and he had a lot of coverage responsibilities, at least from what I could see. So I think Jason Pinnock actually had his best game of the season. He had 10 tackles. It was basically all over the place, and had a lot of, especially in the first half, he had a lot of nice tackles where didn't get moved back or pushed back, and certainly the defensive line wasn't helping there. As for Dane Belton had 11 tackles, and I was 8 tackles. And I was very encouraged. He had an excellent game, I think. Well, maybe excellence is pushing a bit, but he had a very good game. He was making tackles all over the place. He had 8 tackles, and he had a pass defense, and he had a great interception. Caught it over his shoulder, diving over his shoulder against the sideline. Pass in the first quarter for the first turnover in the game. So very good game by Dane Belton, and encouraged with him going forward. I mean, he's still under contract next year. And I think safety is going to be, if they let Jason Pinnock walk and they just go with the rookie Tyler Nubin, who of course is on IR, and had to go with Dane Belton, I think they'll be okay. So I don't think safety has to be, again, it depends depending on the value. And I'll talk about that on my upcoming video on free agency and on the upcoming draft. I don't think safety has to be a high priority for the Giants in free agency or the draft. Again, but if the value's there, of course, they got to pull the trigger. And if they have to spend a high pick, like a 3rd or 4th round pick, that's more like a mid pick, then I'm fine with it. But certainly don't have to spend a 2nd round pick. I don't think that's even a question, unless Malik Starks of Georgia drops. So anyway, don't want to go too much off on the upcoming draft. We'll save that for when that comes after the season. So again, and now safety play was good, cornerback play was not good. As far as specials was very good. Amir Amir Smith-Marset, yeah, our kick returner, number 87. He had a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. That was great. It was good to see. I'm really encouraged with him. I'd like them to re-sign him for next year. I like Gunner as well, but I would just go with Amir Marset simply because he's younger. He's 25 as opposed to 28 years old. And yeah, and then Graham Gano kicked his only field goal attempt. That was already when the game was kind of already iced. And kicked all 5 of his extra points. Excuse me, all 6 of the extra points. So good game by him. And the Swedish Hammer, Jillian Gillen had averaged about 48.7 yards a kick, so on his 3 punts. So specials played well. There was only 1 punt coverage, and they only gave up 7 yards on there. So good special teams play. So specials, I mean, they got a touchdown, no mistakes, and actually played well. So between Drew Lock and the passing game playing very well, and the offensive line pass protecting very well, and specials, I mean, shoot, they got a score. So that's the difference in the game. You could also have to put a little bit on the Colts. The Colts didn't seem to call a very good game, especially the first half. There seemed to be Jonathan Taylor, as a matter of fact, Jonathan Vilma, one of the announcers for the game, he talked about how Jonathan Taylor's strength is the inside running game, and they seem to call a lot of tosses and a lot of sweeps that the Giants were able to close in on him. And the Colts missed on getting some more yardage and first downs. They adjusted and started running inside the Giants more, which hence they got over 120-something yards rushing. But yeah, Colts didn't play call very well, I thought, and their receivers were getting open all day. And they should have went down the field because it worked when they did go down there. So a little bit, they got a little bit lucky. I mean, Indianapolis is just an average team. They were fighting for a playoff spot. The Giants were bound to win one of these games anyway. But I'm encouraged that they won. I know a lot of online sites like CBS Sports, just to name a few, talked about how the Giants kind of messed up their number 1 pick chance. But I don't agree with that. The players are human. They want to win games, whether they win. If they win 2 games at the end of the year or 3 games, you always rather win 3 games than 2 games. So anyway, keep fighting, Giants. Last game of the season against the Eagles, Saquon Barkley is going to try and probably go break Eric Dickerson's rushing record. He's got over 2,000 yards. I hate seeing Saquon as I was okay with the decision to let him walk. I would have liked to have seen them trade him in 2023. But, I mean, this GM has just been making mistakes left and right. So it was a mistake to get nothing for Saquon Barkley, and now they go to our division rival, and he's going to have a historic year, or what probably will be a historic year. He may win the MVP. I actually think he deserves it. Anytime a running back rushes for 2,000 yards, how can you not get the MVP? Unless a quarterback throws for 6,000 yards and 60 touchdowns or something. So good for Saquon, bad for the Giants. I hope the Giants win next week. Again, I don't want them playing. They won't tank, but I still want to see a good game. I want to see the young players develop. That's highly important. We want to see what's going on for 2025. I hope the Giants get rid of GM Joe Shane. I hope they get rid of head coach Brian Daboll. I want the Giants to get a new quarterback. They don't necessarily have to do it with their first pick. I really only like Cam Waters, a first-round pick, but I think I'm fine with Carson Beck or Dart Jackson in the second round. Maybe even Jalen Monroe, but I don't think he's lasting. So I'll talk more about that in my video coming, not next week, but the week after with my mock draft. So please stay tuned for that. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again, Giants fans. Take care.